All right, looks like we have most people in now. Let's jump right in. Welcome again to everyone who has just joined, and thank you for being here with us today on Data Privacy Day for our webinar, Privacy Nightmares, Real Client Scenarios Agencies Had to Fix. And we really appreciate you joining this session and looking forward to a thoughtful, practical discussion. I'm Chetna, Product Manager at CookieYes, and I'll be your host for today's session. Joining me as co-host is Yasin Mohammed, the Customer Success Manager at CookieYes. And we are delighted to welcome our special guest speaker, Mike Saunders, Chief Executive Officer of DigitLab and our valued agency partner. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks very much. Good to be here.
Cool. Mike is an international conference speaker, entrepreneur, and digital expert with extensive experience working on the agency side and directly with clients. So he'll share firsthand experiences and lessons drawn from the real client scenarios during the session. All right. Next slide, please. So, yeah, why are we having this conversation? Let's start with a simple scenario, one that probably feels pretty familiar. A website launches, the cookie banner is in place, consent is set up. So basically, everything looks fine. And then weeks or maybe a couple months later, something changes. Analytics doesn't line up the way it used to. Ads stop optimizing. The business starts getting traffic from new countries or regions with different consent rules. Or an audit suddenly raises questions no one was really expecting. See, nothing really broke overnight, right? But all of a sudden, it feels like a privacy nightmare. And the thing is, in many ways, cookie compliance has become the front line of website privacy. It's the first thing users see, the first thing platforms react to, and usually the first place where things starts to feel off. And most consent-related issues don't start loud, they start small. Data getting collected before someone has clearly agreed. Tracking behaving a little differently after a site update. Older consent setups just quietly carrying forward. So on their own, none of these feel urgent, right? But over time, what happens is that those gaps add up. So this webinar is about the real situations agencies get pulled into when privacy, data, and performance stop lining up, and suddenly everyone is trying to figure out what changed. And just to be clear, our intention here is not to talk about regulations in theory. It's to talk about what actually happens inside real client setups and what agencies can do to catch these issues earlier and avoid surprises later. Okay, so who is this session relevant for? Relevant for digital and marketing agencies, particularly those managing multiple client websites. Also teams involved in analytics, advertising, tracking, or compliance where privacy decisions directly impact performance and reporting. And agencies supporting global or multiple region clients where consent requirements and user expectations vary by location. So many of these scenarios we'll discuss today may feel familiar. Okay, now let's quickly look at what you'll get from this session and some of the common situations agencies run into.
Yeah, thank you,
So,
Chet.
yeah.
Yeah, so we'd like to discuss what you can expect from this session. So we'd be mostly sharing real anonymized agency scenarios, especially from the perspective of DigitLab and the experiences that they have come through. And also we'd be understanding how privacy issues surface in the first hand, and also learn what didn't work for them or probably what doesn't work for agencies and why that happens like that. And also, we'll be talking through what actually helped fix the issues. In most cases, a small interference usually fixes the issue. It's just that you need to be aware of what the issue is and what is that minor fix. So this session is all about only awareness and not to create theory or problems. So it's all about creating awareness among our agency partners. So, without wasting much time, we move on to the most important part, which is discussing about a few common privacy nightmares that agencies usually face. So, we have heard from agencies that the clients ask these questions very repeatedly. For example, there are clients coming up and asking, ever since we added this banner, the conversions have dropped. What has been the issue? Because that has been affecting our ROI calculations, etc. Also, we also hear Google Analytics, Metapixels, Hotjar, and other analytics scripts firing all prior to consent on page load. That is a serious concern towards privacy. We also hear we've set up the cookie consent years ago, and suddenly we have received a compliance notice. So why is that so? Because we've managed everything beforehand itself. What has been the change? Why is this happening? And the most frequent thing is visitors come up and ask the clients, "Can you show proof of our consent?" So this is basically the consent log that is being recorded by consent managers, cookie consent management platforms. And due to the lack of awareness among the agencies, it makes them feel that these are very complicated issues. So basically, these are not edge cases. They're common agency scenarios that come up frequently when you deal with the privacy space. So we would, in this session, we would like to normalize all these things, given a bit of extra awareness about these things and how that can be managed, and all with the first-hand experiences of your peer agencies like DigitLab. So before we dive into the webinar, there's a good clarification we would like to make. So this session is not a legal advice and definitely not a product demo. It's also not about comparing tools. We'll be just having a discussion based on real agency experiences and what we have learned from that. So it would be a educational session like thing.
So I'll pass it to Yasin to take us into the discussion with Mike.
Yeah, Mike, before we start, would you like to talk about DigitLab, what you guys do, and give a bit context to the agency partners who have also joined as attendees here?
Sure. Thanks so much, guys, and thanks again for hosting us. It's really good to be having these conversations and to be sharing information. So I'm glad to be a part of it. So, guys, DigitLab is a digital consultancy. We are an agency partner because with CookieYes, because we work a lot in the data-driven marketing and sales consultant space. So we're interested in the whole pipeline from awareness all the way through to the close of the actual deal with our clients. And because we work through that whole pipeline, especially when GDPR and privacy became a big thing and cookie banners started getting put into place, especially when they were being done incorrectly, there were big breaks in the data pipeline. And so the work we did became very difficult to do because the data was being limited, access to the data was being limited, and we had to change the way in which we were doing things, and we had to figure out how to do things in this new compliant privacy world, and it's been an interesting journey.
So I think all the attendees are eagerly waiting to hear the stories that we have that are actual scenarios. And yeah, we would go deep into the client story patterns that we often see with that the agencies face. So I think to start with, the most important thing is we hear a lot of concerns against site performance after privacy tools are added. So I think, Mike, have you seen cases where agencies keep adding tools to solve a particular problem, but that actually made things worse over time with respect to privacy? So have you
All
seen
the time.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, happens all the time. It happens a lot with agencies that are working with WordPress. I see that happening a lot. But even with other setups and infrastructure, everybody kind of, because we live in this tech world that very much you could add a plugin or something to solve a problem. We can add a script, do something quite neat and easy and connect and integrate with all of these tool sets. It's always a temptation to just go ahead and do it. And what privacy is asking of everybody is to think twice before doing that and ask whether it's actually relevant. Ask whether you really need to do it. And then only do the things that are really necessary for your business or for being able to actually deliver the services to your clients. So what has weirdly become a big part of our business has been when we meet clients and we usually end up taking over projects and websites or platforms or advising people on their existing infrastructure. This technical bloat is usually the first thing that we hit our heads against. Depending on how much of it there is and also how many years of legacy there is, because, depending on how long a website platform's been in place, you could have 5 different managers who have been working for a company who have been involved in this website over time, and they don't know anymore what they can plug in and unplug and without breaking everything. And so it's a nerve-wracking experience, but systematically you're able to kind of really figure it out and start making some good decisions. But technical bloat will slow down your whole entire site. So it's bad news in that respect. But from a compliance perspective, the biggest issue is that we'll find cookies that are just lying around all over the site that aren't even in use. And so now what's happening is that you're asking people to, if you've found them and you're using them in your banner, then great, but you're asking people to consent to things that aren't necessary, and they may not on the basis of that. If you arrive at a site with 700 cookies on it, you're less likely to consent, Whereas, and then the other problem is that we often find that just that bloat itself, not only are they irrelevant, but people don't even know where those accounts exist anymore. So just being able to understand and manage that and bring it all into one place and manage everything effectively into one environment. The analytics alone is quite a big thing to streamline and sort out.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And also, I think these days consent modes also have been a concern for most of the clients. So basically, we hear a lot of people saying, yes, we have enabled the consent mode. But in reality, how often do you see it technically enabled, but not really working, which is the way it is expected to be? Have you seen situations like that?
Yeah. Again, we especially on takeover, or it'll often be something that's been noticed as we. So one of the reasons that we'll take over a site is not necessarily compliance, but will be for another reason. But in our assessment of it, what almost always happens, it's actually crazy how often this happens, is that the banners that are in place, when you actually click consent, they don't change anything in your consent settings. So either they've completely blocked them, and then when you click consent, nothing happens, or they're actually not blocking anything. And so there's this like phantom button that you get to press, which apparently makes people feel good, but you're actually not really doing anything to your compliance. And I think people get away with that to a degree because it's technically a little bit more difficult to assess, but that's not going to be the case for long, because things are just going to get easier and easier and easier. And it is one of the things that people look at when you're looking at compliance, is whether or not these things actually work. And I think a large problem actually resides in this plugin culture, because if you've got developers who have been asked to put in a plugin, a cookie banner, and the definition of the brief is this cookie banner must just come up and ask people to accept cookies. Then they go and install a plugin and it does just that. They haven't enabled any of the other pieces that are important to make that thing happen. They're not going to worry about it because it's not in the brief. It's not in the system. And so when you're working with teams that are siloed, I'm not saying that they're bad at what they're doing. They're just siloed in the way that they've been instructed to do things. And the knowledge of the legal knowledge of the compliance, the technical knowledge of what's needed to be done, they don't merge. And when that happens, because that happens, you don't actually really get to a place where anyone can actually tick off the compliance properly. And so it always just ends up being left alone. This particular issue, consent mode not set up correctly, is mind-blowing. There's another nuance to this though as well. If you were to set up CookieYes compliance correctly, but you were to not set up your Google Analytics correctly, or let's mainly use analytics and then also Google AdWords. And I'm using this ad tech just as an example because it's probably the one we understand the most in the audience. But if you don't go into Google and allow and in the backend settings, set all of your privacy settings to consented, then everything that you send back and forward to that tech will be treated as non-consented, even though you've set up Google GMP in your settings and everything's up and running and everything's supposed to be talking to each other, and CookieYes is sending the data to Google, etc. Google will say thanks for the data, but it's not consented, and so we can't do anything with this. So unless you actually get into your accounts and understand how Google needs to process that information, or whichever ad tech platform you're working with or other technology you're working with, you need to make sure that these things are actually set up correctly so you're processing this information backwards and forwards cleanly. Else, what is the point, really? So your consent ecosystem is just that. It's an ecosystem. It's not a banner. And you've got to understand the data flow that you're expecting that consent to flow through.
I think this is an issue most of the agencies might be facing, and everyone could probably relate to that. And also coming next to the global context, at DigitLab, do you have you seen situations where a setup worked fine for a particular country, and then problems started arising as soon as traffic started coming from a different region? Probably you've set up the banner for UK, and then you get visits from the US. So do you see that very often?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily problems. We work with a lot of clients who are either we've worked with a startup that was sitting in the US that had a US target audience and a UK target audience, and that particular startup didn't really understand UK compliance laws. So being able to kind of geo-target that rule set for opt-out in the US and then opt-in in the UK was an important step, for them, because in their case, what was happening is that the laws are a little bit easier from a tracking perspective in the US, but if they had just transferred that and just allowed people from the UK, they would come under pressure. They wouldn't be compliant. And so by advising them that they just need to make this change, but they need to build in consent, that helped them at least be compliant. It created a whole new set of problems for them in the US because that's not how they're used to marketing and analyzing. And so not being able to see the data that they're used to being able to see was really, really tough for them. But it was really necessary because of their lack of knowledge of the two differences. But then we see the opposite. We actually see the opposite happen a lot more because we work with a lot of, say, Swiss companies now. If you've ever worked with a company in Switzerland, you'll know that the majority of them, Switzerland's like a small little financial hub, and they work with they kind of disperse a lot of global companies. So they tend to work tend to have a big head office and they work with lots of global regions. And so we work with quite a few of those. And we also work in South Africa, which has POPI legislation, which is pretty much as strict as GDPR. And so so we actually enable GDPR legislation right the way through. It helps us and meet all the needs. But the challenge now is that in both of these examples is that I could go in and say, okay, GDPR regions, tick. Let's just go GDPR. Now, if I'm breaking into new markets, the problem there is that if I don't geolocate those target banners, what I'm actually doing, yes, I'm handling my compliance. Yes, I'm being as safe as I can from a compliance point of view. And yes, no one's going to catch me off guard. So yes, that's the safest route you can take. If you had a compliance officer in your office, he would sleep well at night. But your marketing person and your guys in charge of commercials and your business people, they are not sleeping well at night because they are competing in a market that has no privacy regulation or has a lower level of privacy regulation. And all of their competitors are able to utilize the data that comes from that because they're waiting for an opt-out or there is no privacy. They don't even need to display a banner. So there's tons of data you can capture on the users to be able to better target, better deliver services, personalized advertising, etc. And you're running a disservice to yourself because you're not allowing that data through the pipeline. And so the geo-targeting of that becomes really important. So
I think that was a very detailed explanation of the situation and how you have managed that. I think coming to the people who implement the banners, one thing that most of the people oversee is the subdomains. So
yeah.
Subdomains actually sound very small, but they cause big headaches in most cases. So how often do you see consent or tracking missed simply because a subdomain wasn't included in that, or it was just left out?
Yeah, so, and I'm sure this is happening to everybody, but normally a consent banner is raised on the primary asset that a client is marketing off of. So it'll be the group website or the e-commerce site or whatever site they're selling off of. But a consent banner is there to manage the privacy of the users. And it is it's really only one mechanism of an entire privacy, now the word's going to escape me, of an entire privacy governance system that's been created by the business. And it's held up by lawyers both internally and externally, and in many cases by country governments. And so really you're just one piece of that massive puzzle, okay? Which means that, yes, I've got to worry about it as my customer who is new to my site and may not want to be tracked. But what about your customer that is visiting your client portal? They might not want to be tracked. And you've got first-party or third-party scripts that they need to know about, that they should be opting in for. You've got possibly tool sets on there that need cookie tracking in order to be able to track their usage, etc., so that you can better understand them. So what about internal portals? What about staff who are using portals to be able to track all of their leave and their holiday time and their sick leave and their dates off and all the rest of it? That's a platform. This is personal information that's being shared. This becomes a place in which you need to be thinking about, do we need cookie banner compliance in this space? Because if we do, then we need to include these sub banners into our mix. And so one of the things that I've started now asking when we work through these things is, what are the subdomains off the main domain? Because it's really not a hard thing to implement. But it's not like we're adding hundreds of new licenses when we do this. We just need to technically implement it across a wider breadth. But it becomes really important.
So I think it's just the small oversight that causes all these confusions and nightmares to the agencies. Yeah. And
and it's really not a hard implementation. So yeah.
that's very true. So, how often do you see agencies discover that CMP usage numbers are being inflated by bots? So, bots have been a very frequent thing in the recent days. So, it's mostly the numbers shown are bots rather than normal users. So, how
Yeah.
do we manage that? Like, is it actually true?
Yeah. So I would say not often, but I would say in the last 2 weeks,
Hmm.
I've picked up this on a lot of my clients.
Okay.
And let me give you some background. We're Kinsta hosting partners as well. So if you know anything about the Kinsta platform, our clients are paying for the volume of traffic in the same way that CookieYes is paying for the volume of usage, right?
Mhm.
So if traffic increases, our clients are seeing an increase in their cost and an increase in their cookie banner cost. Now, that only makes sense to them if at the same time they're generating all this new sales, which
Mhm.
is generally the case of what's going on. And so what we noticed is that there were a couple of months that went through and we were seeing this steady incline in traffic, but
Mhm.
we were not seeing the conversions grow off the back of it. And so we started to investigate and we saw that the spot traffic thing was becoming more and more of a problem. And bot traffic specifically over the last, I would say, 2 months or so has increased astronomically. And I'm taking a guess, but I'm fairly certain it's got to do with the increase in AI and how things are pushing out into the internet to generate its own content, to generate its own research, to do all these things. And so all of these bots are there for their own purpose, not for yours as a business, right? So we don't want to be paying for the cookie banner displays. We don't want to be paying for the site traffic, etc., because it's not for our benefit.
Mhm.
Okay, so this bot traffic thing is really, really, I think, a concern and something we should be tracking and being aware of. And where it became actually really specific for us is that I would say for the last couple of weeks, it was something we were tracking and monitoring and fixing on our existing server network, but it wasn't something that kind of caused a trigger for anything to increase just yet. But one of our clients who hosts their own website, they got a trigger to increase their CookieYes license this last month. And I was about to kind of systematically go and just upgrade, and they were about to pay it and do all those things. And we were just like, well, let's just, it's time, it's a huge site. It's a big global travel site. Like it made sense. And I just said to them, before we do that, just because we've been dealing with it, check your bot traffic.
Mhm.
30% of their traffic was bot traffic. And if they can just deal with their bot traffic, they won't need to upgrade, probably for the next year or so while they deal with the rest of their conversion strategies and stuff. And why that's important to them right now is because when I look at the greater conversation that I'm having with them as a consultancy, they're investing heavily in their growth strategy. And so to now go and throw a CookieYes banner growth and more hosting fees and everything on top of all of that just because of bot traffic.
Mike, coming to one of the hot topics that everyone usually discusses, like once a CMP goes live, which is the cookie consent management platform, goes live, analytics data sometimes look a bit off or probably incomplete, leading to teams thinking that something's broken with the analytics data. So, what's actually going on in these cases? So, is it actually a problem or is it a necessary evil?
Um, let me answer that by saying initially it is a problem
Mhm.
because for the marketers in the business, you've lost sight of key things that are helping you grow your business. Um, but as you start to understand this new privacy world we live in and the new tool sets that exist for us to be able to look into them, what I've been really impressed by is the technology that comes to the table and the way that technology businesses are partnering with each other to provide better metric systems than
Mhm.
what we had before. And they've they've kind of had to dig deeper because they can't show these metric systems that we've become so used to. What is the value of a click?
That's true.
No one really, like we know what the value is because we get a price on it, but it means very little. Even the value of a form being filled in is negotiably a non-point. When you're trying to look at this from a growth perspective and growing a business from a revenue perspective. And so what we need to be thinking about is when you put CMPs in place, the conversion strategy, let me put this, the conversion measurement strategy that you have in place will change fundamentally. Because you're not going to be able to track every single user on your website, your Google Analytics, as an example, is going to become an indication of the trend. It's not going to become an exact usage. Your forms being completed are going to become your actual conversion numbers, or as an example, or your purchases on your site will become your actual conversion numbers. Whereas Google Ads and Google Analytics or any other analytics tool that you're using, unless they're kind of on board, they're going to show you something else completely. And when you look at this and you see it like this, you're losing data that you had, but you're forcing yourself to now look at data that you do have that's actually more meaningful. And so what we found is that integration into CRM became non-negotiable when you're talking about business growth. And when you look at kind of how the tech stacks are lining up, and I'll talk to it very simply, the ad tech space. So as an example, CookieYes, you guys are working with Microsoft and with Google on their compliance spaces, right? So both of those networks have compliance built into your CMP. So that's really fantastic. That means that as we see conversions tracking, we can see a lot more. So that's that conversation. And if you get that CMP right, then as the data flows, it flows through into whichever other systems you're looking for and that you have in play, because you are activating the cookie banners and you're activating the cookies you need to use. Now, beyond that, if you now plug that into a CRM system as an example, and your forms start now populating a CRM that populates fields like, this is a marketing qualified lead, this is a sales qualified lead, hey, we just closed a new customer. What those same ad tech companies, as they've worked with you, they've worked with CRM businesses, and they've now created ways for you to be able to track those life cycles. And so now every time you close a customer, you can send that information back to your ad tech. And every time you close a sales qualified lead, you can send that information. And so now we don't need to worry about clicks and form and like conversions on a page. We can worry about form completions and sales of customers. And that data is harder to achieve. It's much harder to achieve that data, but it's more realistic. It's a bigger challenge, and it's more effective to growing businesses. And so you can do one of two things. You can choose to now go and put in, let's say, a on-server analytics system that's got a first-party analytics tool, and then store all your own analytics and not use these tool sets, which is going to then discount you from this ecosystem that they're building, so that you can actually tap into their big data networks and all the rest of it that actually will help you bring more of the right customers to your door. So that's your one option. And if you go that route, what you're more likely doing is you're trying to replicate the analytical system that you had on your platform. So that's option A. Option B is to go, hey, the world is changing. We live in a privacy space, and everybody's had to find a way through it.
I think
that's the view we look at it. Yeah.
So I think that's a whole new perspective on how we can look at data and how we can understand data. So I think that was really helpful. So based on your experiences, what does clients actually need beyond just installing a banner? Is there something more than a banner that they require, or?
So I would say the first thing that clients are looking for is peace of mind. Um, that's what they're looking for. And if I look at this as now the person who's got to provide that peace of mind, like it's been difficult. I've had to go and sit with lawyers and understand legislation, not just in my own country, but in other countries. And then I've had to go and understand the technology. And that's again why we went with a CMP and we started working with you guys, because I was like, you guys deal with the tech, please, because that's a big enough job on its own. We will implement, we will run, we understand it enough to know what you're doing. And so we can advise our clients accordingly. But we don't need to build and measure and check and do and all of those things. So what we get from platforms like yours is we get that peace of mind that the technology is being dealt with. Okay. But what we have to transfer to the client is that same peace of mind. And that doesn't just come with, hey, the tech's being dealt with. It comes with developing a knowledge around all the consent strategies and the privacy controls that are in place, and being able to advise them when they need what at the different levels that their own privacy policies are. Because depending on which country you're in, you can have a very different level of developed privacy policy, and you're going to have different expectations of how developed that needs to be. So peace of mind is the first thing that we've got to be able to provide them as clients. Is we can fix this for you, and we know how because we've taken the time to understand, excuse my language, but the shit show called privacy in this new world, because it is insane what's changed in the last 5 years. And so peace of mind, because they're still grappling with it. Then I think the other thing that they're grappling with is their actual tech stack. And so we've spoken a lot about how things are needing to connect properly, and they're grappling with these little niggles. I've got the banner, I've got the thing, I'm using all the best tech in the world, but it's still not gelling. Where's that fix? What's missing? Why am I not getting this right? And wrongly so, but right in the frustration, clients will fire their Google ads or their advertising agency because they can't get the conversions that they're looking for, even though they've got what the problem isn't that they're not good at what they do. The problem is that the consent banners aren't set up correctly and they're not communicating backwards and forwards. And there's just, without the knowledge of that, again, you're just not going to get anywhere. So understanding that pipeline, being able to create all the connections, understanding the power of that analytical infrastructure brings that journey into play. Clients have really enjoyed the controlled, like one place where everything is. We don't use any of the plugins that CookieYes has. We run everything with Google Tag Manager because it creates that single control for everything that they're running, and that makes a big difference for them to know that there's one home for all of their tracking setups, and it also helps us control that bloat that we were talking about before with the client. And then helping clients define when they're using first and third party data has been quite something that I've noticed quite a lot, because Facebook, TikTok, and Google want to drop first party pixels into your infrastructure, and you treat them differently. And so where do those things get housed? What should you be doing with them? What shouldn't you be doing with them? How do you see them, etc. And knowing that you treat those differently to the others, and making sure that they sit in the right space of your compliance and your cookie compliance infrastructure, so that they don't get blocked for the wrong reasons, etc.
So I think to summarize, what the client actually requires is an agency who has better understanding of how the compliance works, how data works, and agency wants a tool that does all the weightlifting and gives peace of mind. I think that's what we come to after discussing all these points. So coming to what were some of the approaches that gave the teams false confidence? Something that you thought worked initially, but it actually failed over time. So were there things like that that you would like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to the one earlier, but like one times install plugin, that gives it a lot of fake confidence, and we've been down that road right from the beginning of it. And that's how we saw the error in our ways. So yeah, just having a banner creates a lot of false confidence, and people don't realize even clients don't understand what they need. And so we find ourselves educating them on what they need to be doing. Not having visibility of your data journey doesn't work. And what I really liked about the CookieYes infrastructure was the analytics, because it gave us a view of the yes, no on the traffic. So I could, like, if I've got your server traffic because I host your site, I can show you server traffic and how it compares to your Google Analytics. But I don't always have your server traffic. So being able to have your cookie acceptance and your cookie hit traffic, that allows me to really understand more of the data journey that's taking place, and the opt-ins, opt-outs that are taking place, and what kind of opportunities exist for the customer through that data journey. So just kind of accepting that there's no visibility, that it doesn't work. You've got to push for it and find a way through it to find something that works for the client to understand how they. And then again, assuming that all your tech platforms have consent, assuming that is very, very problematic. Test it, double check it. And the problem is that they don't necessarily tell you that you just don't feel the impact of what consent should do for you in that data. You just don't get the feedback that you're looking for. So you sometimes have to do some heavy lifting on the research side and sitting in the forums and trying to figure this stuff out. But it's worth it in the end to really understand it. Yeah, try not to break what you've set up. But it is quite difficult to do because we don't work on the same projects continuously all the time. But that's also why we've chosen that the way we've decided to do things is in a very specific way.
So I think the one question that most agencies have is that, is a cookie banner actually necessary or is it optional? So at what point does a proper CMP becomes necessary rather than it's an option?
I think if your clients see you as the gatekeeper to their cookie policy and whether it's working or not. So if you had in your contract that you were handing over the responsibility of the usage of that cookie banner, then I don't think you need a CMP because there's no risk to you. You could install the banner, client's got to approve it, they've got to make sure it's happy, and you're good to go. But most of us don't have that luxury. And so what's wonderful about working with a CMP is that you're taking responsibility of the whole process, and you're working with and you're applying the same process across all of your clientele. By doing that and letting everyone play by the same set of rules, as policies change, as things change, you're applying that across everybody. And so you don't have to think about all of these little clients that are sitting in the middle of it going, oh, flip, they're not on that platform, they're not on that platform, they're not on that platform. We've literally made CookieYes mandatory. We don't take on projects unless you've got CookieYes. We don't sell CookieYes. You just get it. Like people go, oh, what is this? Like it's just like we've got a couple of clients that specifically came to us because they had a CookieYes problem, or they wanted a CookieYes solution, and they came that route. But the vast majority of our clients that are on CookieYes are there because we put them on it, because they wanted a website, they wanted a hosting solution, they wanted something, and this is our compliance offering. And we don't take you on unless you've got compliance, because it's the law. it's the infrastructure. And by using a CMP, we give access to the client for them to be able to control their privacy. So we no longer are the custodian of their privacy. We're providing the tool set for them to manage it. And that's what's important. Yeah, so let me talk to the clients that specifically came in through the door looking for cookie compliance as solutions, or specifically came in with these problems, right? And I mean, it's obvious, like if you come in with a problem with conversion tracking and you work through it in the right compliance areas, you will get better conversion tracking and you will see better reporting. But most times it's different reporting. That's what we've seen. But I think the key here is that you want to eliminate the surprises. You want to be able to see where the data shifts. You want to see where things move quite quickly. You want to see all the little points at which they move. But the majority of our clients that came in with those kinds of problems, after you've dealt with the problem, it does become reliable. It does become quite standard to be able to kind of deliver what they want. Once they've accepted, it's going to look differently. CMPs I also find work much faster than onboarding any other tool set on a website. I find cookie banners tend to deliver quite slowly, but CMPs deliver much faster. I think it's a big part of their own delivery solution. If they're slow, no one's going to buy them. They make sure that works. I think some clients are not used to paying for compliance. But if you can structure the payments in such a way that they can absorb them and make them work, you can see that they can feel that the compliance is coming at a much lower cost. And that's what we've found. So, like for instance, putting the cookie banner compliance as a default into hosting has made people just feel like it's part of the hosting fees. It's not a compliance fee, which I'm not used to paying, if you know what I mean. And so some clients don't want to pay for that, but that is actually what it costs to do, you know. And we've done research on this. Every year we research a couple of hundred companies around digital as a whole. And what we've learned from these things is that the more digitally mature businesses get, the more confident they are in the decisions they make. And the more confident they are, the quicker they can take things to market, the quicker they can move, the more agile they are. And that is the competitive edge. And so that last point that's on here, more confident decision making, yes, a CMP is part of that. And a CMP is an indication of a more mature digital infrastructure. So as your digital infrastructure becomes more valuable, as your digital infrastructure becomes more mature, and the business can start trusting the data that flows through it, they become more confident as marketers, as salespeople, and business owners to make the right decisions quickly.
Okay.
And I think that's the most important piece.
Yeah. That's very insightful. I think, Mike, we've been discussing a lot of scenarios and a lot of experiences from the perspective of DigitLab. So if agencies take away just a couple of advices from your experiences, what should they focus on actually? What importance, what should they put more importance on? Do you have any suggestions for them?
The first word is ecosystem. Remember that you're not putting up a banner, you're implementing an ecosystem of privacy. And so think of all the other technologies that are coming into play. Every cookie that you're adding into that system probably needs some sort of system integration, some check into that system to make sure that it is actually integrating into what you're putting into on the table. So you're not implementing a banner, you're not implementing a CMP, you're building an ecosystem of compliance. And so that's key. If you are so inclined, and it is the way that you want to go with option B, base your decisions on CRM and lifecycle data. It's going to get you much further in the race on metrics and the race to grow businesses. And yeah, and then finally, don't rely on surface level metrics. I think the biggest gift that this privacy world gave us was that they forced us to stop tracking everything. And so then it became a case of saying, well, what do we actually really need to track? And so now we're seeing solutions come to the market that are tracking actually valuable data points instead of just giving us everything because they can. So that for me is really important, and I think we should embrace that. We should be embracing this industry rather than getting frustrated with it.
I think these are definitely very valuable advices that our agencies can keep in mind as you have learned all these from your experiences and the researches and experimentations that you have done so far. Thanks a lot, Mike, for your advices for our fellow agencies and our attendees for this webinar. I'll give this to Chetna.
Yeah, that was a great deep dive. Thanks so much, Mike, for sharing your experiences and perspectives so openly. And they really helped bring to life the kinds of challenges agencies face across different client setups and showed how these issues play out in real situations. Okay, so before moving on, I just want to add that we did go slightly over the hour we had planned for, but we hope the discussion was valuable and worth the extra time. So, yeah, how CookieYes supports agencies. See, when agencies manage privacy across multiple websites, maintaining consistency quickly becomes difficult, right? Especially as sites are updated, redesigned, or expanded over time. So, this is where a more centralized approach makes a real difference. So, with CookieYes, consent can be managed in one place and applied consistently across client sites, reducing one-off fixes and repeated manual checks. And setups stay aligned as privacy rules and platform requirements evolve, and routine tasks like cookie scanning and documentation can be handled on an ongoing basis without needing to revisit every site after each update. And yeah, consent behavior can also be aligned by default for different regions, such as opt-in consent for European visitors or opt-out mechanisms where applicable in parts of the US, helping meet regional expectations without starting from the scratch each time. And alongside consent and cookies, required documents like the cookie and privacy policies can be generated. So documentation stays in sync with how consent is set up. So instead of treating privacy as something that's addressed only after a website goes live, this approach follows privacy by design, building consent and compliance into the initial website setup, and keeping them aligned as the site evolves. All right, with that, let's move into a few questions. Yasin has been working closely with agencies and has pulled together some of the most common questions that come up in real client situations. Yeah, Yasin, over to you now.
Yeah, I think, Mike, it would be the best if you could answer these from a agency perspective. So, do agencies need in-house legal expertise to offer privacy support? Is it actually required?
No. I do think it's important that you've got someone on your team that's taken some time to understand the frameworks, not in detail. And I
Okay.
do think it's important that you have a legal team, like a service, someone, a lawyer that is on call, but not necessarily at your call, but at the client's call. So what we just said to our clients is that if you don't have your own legal team, we have someone you can use. So it's worth building that network and getting someone in and around. we find that our clients very rarely will ever use them because they would prefer to use their own entire internal team. But if you open up a bit of a world of pain if you try to start offering these services to the client and trying to offer legal expertise. That's not our role.
I think this was a question most of our agencies, and we've also received that via emails, etc. And I think this answers it perfectly. So coming to the next question, normally what pricing models do agencies use for ongoing privacy services? Because privacy services involves a lot of things, and the pricing models vary depending upon probably agencies. And how do you manage it at DigitLab? Do you have any insights on that?
Okay, so privacy, well, any sort of software model, whether you're a consultancy like we are or you're an agency, any software model is going to have a number of different pricing models. One of them is volume. So sell as many as you can and earn the commission that you're going to get off the back of your bulk pricing on when you purchase off the back of your licensing with CookieYes. That's the one way you can do it. The other way you can do it is that you could then bolster on all of your fees to install, implement, consult on the frameworks, etc., on top of that, and then charge for those fees. What you charge for those fees, I think, will depend on your agency, your consultancy, how you've positioned, the expertise you bring to the table, and how you do that. And you can run a combination of both. The other way you could do it is to provide the consulting for free and then use it as a loss leader and try and drive extreme volume on the product itself. We go with the product with consulting, and we also, as I've said, we batch it into other offerings because it's what we've learned is that it's actually a tool that brings compliance to things that need compliance. So it's just that thing that you bolt into. No one really questions why it's there. They just go, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so it's not that we're trying to sell it into everything. It's that we need that compliance on our website to do our job properly. We need that compliance on our hosting infrastructure to do compliance properly. So and we won't do those jobs without this. So we just bolster it in. And what we've done is try to be a bit more creative with the pricing so that it's a bit easier for our clients to absorb. And then we've just got to manage our cash flow a little bit on our end. But those models work for us quite nicely. Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of insightful. Going to the next question, how much time does it usually take to onboard a client for privacy management? Do you have any average time that is taken by a client?
So we will typically onboard an average client who already has their privacy policies written up. So in other words, we don't need to advise them on any infrastructure, like privacy infrastructure. We will typically onboard a client within 48 hours.
Okay.
And that's just because like I said, we've got a process. And so once we've got access to everything we need, it's within 48 hours we can get it through the door. And that has been quite a key component to us being able to deliver the offering, because you do need to solve this problem quickly for people.
So that's a 360-degree coverage of all the things that you've mentioned so far.
Yeah.
So everything is done in 48 hours. Oh, that's nice.
And again, it's because we've done it for long enough that we just know what to go and look for and which boxes to tick and figure out. It does change if there are complete wildcards. If it's there's no privacy infrastructure, there's no information policies, there's nothing, then we take steps back. We have to go in and consult, and we have to really understand what's going on. But if there's a privacy policy in place and we're just providing the infrastructure and the ad tech and the journey, then we can do it in 48 hours.
That's totally understandable. So coming to the next question, can privacy solutions be customized for clients? So there's a thought that privacy solutions are just non-customizable. It's all by default. Is it true, or can it be customized for clients?
I think it depends what you mean by customized, but I think every client has a unique infrastructure in the way they are built, and they have unique goals and ambitions. So some are purely focused in a local region. Then your privacy solution is going to be single geography, one banner solution, simple, off you go. At least from a technology perspective. Others have global reach opportunities. Some have global reach ambitions, but not yet. So then you want to set up the infrastructure, but let them understand that when they're ready to do that, we're going to do an upgrade. And that's also why they're buying into the technology, is that it can scale with their growth. So I would say, yes, it's customizable, but you're not custom building. You're custom configuring the existing infrastructure. And how you choose to configure that is based on the client's ambitions with their data for the growth of their business and the needs of their customer. So it's not a custom solution, it's custom configurability of a solution that is uncustomizable, because you can't customize a legal compliance thing. You have to do it. There are just different ways of handling it in the configuration.
That's true. I think to add on to this, I think clients are most concerned about the beautification of their website. So they have designed it in a very unique way, and then there comes a banner which is like plain white color. So I think sorry.
Yeah. No, you're screwed in that respect. You can change the color, you can do what you need to, but you've got to think about this. Everybody designs something in a way because they want to create a particular user experience. Now, take your user experience hat and now put it on again, but through the lens of your need to create the right user experience for privacy. Okay. And the first thing that you're going to say to yourself is, it needs to be clear, visible, and upfront.
That's true.
And that's what a cookie banner is. Whereas when you go the other way around and you have your usability hat where you design, and then you have this compliance hat that you put on, you say, well, I put a banner in, now look at my site, it looks cuck. It's that approach makes you then feel like the entire site has now lost its usability. It hasn't. What you've done is you've created a usability infrastructure that now looks after its privacy as much as it looks after the journey. And in that case, you can customize, whether you're going to use a central pop-up or a side pop-up, or however you want to run things. You have certain capability, but there's certain things you have to do. There's certain things you need to make clear. And I would approach your compliance as a usability infrastructure when you're designing a website, and go, okay, compliance, we need to make clear, we need to do these things. And for someone to understand that we're compliant and that we're going to build transparency and trust with our customer by showing them that we're compliant, we're going to put our banners up front, and they're going to look good, but they're going to be up front, and we're going to have good language. We're not going to oversell. We're not going to use overly legal jargon. We're going to help them understand what's being said, and then you'll get it right. There's still a lot you can do there, but you do have to make them up front and stick them in their faces and let them make a decision.
That's true. I think that's all with the questions that we had, the most frequently asked questions. I'm sure the agencies are having a better clarity of how the things are. Now I give it forward to Chetana.
Okay, great. So because agencies often come with very specific situation-based questions, we focus this session on the situations they most commonly face rather than live Q&A, given the time we had. All right, thanks, Mike, for taking the time to answer those questions.
Pleasure.
So yeah, So with that, we are just about at the end of today's session. So thanks so much, Mike, for thoughtfully walking through the key questions agencies regularly raise and for grounding these discussions in real client scenarios agencies can relate to. And thank you,
Absolutely.
Yasin,
Thanks,
for
Adam.
okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you, Yasin, for guiding the conversation thoughtfully and bringing in perspectives from working closely with agencies every day. And thank you so much all for joining us today. And we are truly grateful for your engagement and really excited to continue supporting agencies as we build long-term partnerships together. With that, we'll wrap up. Have a great day ahead. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ed.
Bye.